Hello. Today in my storytelling playlist, I'm going to talk about glimpses of the sacred. I'm going to tell 4 stories about times where I witnessed the sacred. Now, we see these things every day in little pieces. These are moments where it really hit me, the kind of pivotal moments that I look back on and I see as, these turning points. I'm not going to go into moments of initiation, which I've also had, which I think are a bit more complicated and messy. I'm also not going to go into a lot of the psychedelic revelations I have had, although I will touch upon it a little bit here. The first story happens when I'm a teenager, early teens. I was moved into the basement of my stepfather's house. Up until that point, my stepsisters were sharing a room, but they were getting a little bit too old to share a room. Everyone decided that the best course of action was for me to move into the basement. I would have a bit more privacy. They would each have a bedroom. So to free them up, we had to create a room in the basement. So as I was moving things around, sorting through stuff, I came across a box. There was a bunch of crap thrown in it, just assorted things. And I was kind of moving it. I saw this cross. I don't know, there was something about it, it just spoke to me, and several questions ran through my mind very quickly. The first was, why was it dumped in the box? Why wasn't it on the wall? Which led me to think, whose cross was it? Was it my mother's or was it my stepfather's? And did they, lose their faith or something? Is that why it was down in this box? The next question was, what was its purpose? And I picked it up and I handled it and I realized that it was a baptizing cross. You slide it open and there's a vial of holy water in it. It was empty, but the bottle was still in there. And it really got me to thinking about why it was abandoned. Time went by and I started becoming kind of more obsessed by this cross. I sort of took it into my room and kept it in there. And later in high school, I did drawings of it in my art class. I don't know, there was just something about it. And I think it was like the first moment when I realized that the sacred can be found anywhere. I mean, it was in this box in a basement. I would also say that I think it was a really pivotal point in my process of becoming a spiritual person, partly because it made me see this thing that was rejected. I asked my mom about it later and she just said it was something from my childhood and she didn't really care about it. She kind of just tossed it away. But for me, it definitely seemed more important, almost like a flag. You shouldn't let it hit the ground. You should treat it with some reverence. But that was a turning point that led me to all kinds of things and where I am now. The second time is a bit more revealing and I feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about it, but I'm going to go for it. I was in my mid-20s, I would say about 26 or 27. I had been going through a divorce for the last year or so. It was a rough period, as you might expect. Eventually, it led to my first mystical awakening. In this really dark time, I had moved down to this apartment in Detroit and I was grappling with all these questions. My life had been upended. I was having these suicidal thoughts for several reasons. Emotional reasons, financial reasons, existential reasons. You get the point. I was grappling with all kinds of things. Where I was living at was a kind of hell because it was in the hood and it was just not good. I felt like I was being weighed down by all these problems. Anyway, when I was at my lowest point, I was doing these collages to try to kind of sort out what was going on in my head. A lot of it was very abstract. I would say, looking back on it, very mystical, very spiritual. Eventually, I gave away all the collages to other people as gifts. They were these kind of collections of images of like Barbie or like from comic books or coloring books. There was like pornography involved. There were like dinosaurs and demons and things. They were really intense. Looking back, I would say that was kind of a glimmer of hell, and it was me trying to sort through that. At the bottom of that hole that I had kind of fell into, there was this moment of clarity where I did glimpse the sacred. It gave me a kind of strength that I didn't know I had before that point, which I have relied upon many, many times since then. The third story actually takes place shortly after that, when I'm kind of coming up. I was camping at my cousin's land with a bunch of mutual friends. And somehow, I don't remember how this all happened, but we decided to take mushrooms. And this story really isn't about the psychedelic experience. It's actually more about this. During the night, my ex-wife and I ended up in a car talking for a long time. She was there because we had so many mutual friends that we couldn't just, destroy all these friendships based upon our split. We were in the car and we were talking about all kinds of things because we were tripping on mushrooms. There was a moment when I looked up at the moon. It was almost like I saw the moon for the first time, and it made me just really realize that I didn't belong here. And I don't mean in a way like I was thinking, a few months before that. I mean more like that this world that I was in was not the correct one. And that was probably one of the first moments where I had kind of a Gnostic revelation. It was definitely a sacred experience, and I guess in some ways it was a healing experience because the conversation I had with her resolved a lot of things, and it was just a really pivotal moment in my life. The final story isn't really a story per se. It's actually 3 different events that have to deal with locations. I traveled through Asia for a long time, and through that time I saw a few different temples. One was Bagan in Myanmar, and the other was Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and also a Buddhist temple, Haedong Yonggong Sa in Busan, just outside of Busan on a cliff. And these 3 different experiences all gave me a sense of the sacred. The grandeur of them, the ancientness, the idea that these things were here long before I came into being and would be here long after I was gone. The temple in Busan was easier for me to wrap my head around, I think. It had Buddhist iconography, but the other 2 places felt very alien. It just made me realize that the people that created these things long ago are alien to me. There's no way for me to step into their minds or what they were thinking about or why they made these enormous structures. And that created a great sense of the sacred for me. Unfortunately, a lot of the places are taken over by tourism, so there's that element. But if you can get by that and see them for what they are, I think there was a lot of profound revelation in them, for me anyway. And these were pivotal moments, but like I said, I see the sacred in a blade of grass too. These are just moments that I think really were turning points. But that's all I got for today. Take care. Have a good one.